connected a couple months ago. She was talking about how Facebook changed its algorithm. She had to almost reinvent the way she would market. I'm sure you can see the correct way. Alright, so literally, it told me the story about this the third or fourth time she's redone this business. So here's a woman who knows how to build a business. She's an entrepreneur from St. Louis, took a risk, left an IT job, launched a company, and is doing good, right, doing good. Her and her husband Joe launched a business years ago. You want to get into those details. But I'm just excited to welcome Rob Rosenberger to the stage.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Robin, and I am from St. Louis. I've lived in St. Louis for the last 6 years, but we were in Seattle before that, and I was like, I'm never coming back. I live in Ohio with my mom now. And I know I'm the kids in the school relative. I'm like, this, I'm not sure how this happened, but I think it's good. So I'm going to start with a story. It was a few years ago in St. Louis. We were at Blackburn Market in Webster. It was like a beautiful day, like one of the 5 beautiful fall days. And we were there to film a promotional video for Chinese superheroes. And my kids, who you're going to meet, are wonderfully crazy. And so, like, my perfect idea for this video, and when you have kids and you're doing kid things, your kids seem to be the perfect, like, props for your things, but they're terrible at it, you know? So, like, by the time we were even in the parking lot, like, my whole idea was pretty shot. But I had hope because Liam was coming. And Liam was the boy that you saw right before this. And Liam is one of those people who, the moment you see him, you feel like his best friend. Like, you feel like he actually, like, loves you, which is good because I, like, love him so much. And he just had the best personality, and I was so excited for him to be there and to be, like, he was born with spina bifida, which is a birth defect in your spine. So your spine, essentially, like, your skin doesn't close over your spine when you're growing, and so it causes paralysis of your legs in different degrees. So Liam uses a wheelchair. His choice wheelchair is like meandering, and he is very fast. He terrifies me like all the time. So he's rolling down the sidewalk to me at this park, and I'm so excited to see him that I bend over and I give him like a huge hug, and like that moment, you know, the moment where your stomach is like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Which I also had yesterday when I was like, I'm gonna use this, but it didn't happen right. But I had a moment and I would stand up. I built an entire business on empowering kids with disability. And I invited Liam to help me make a video for this business, and I brought him to a park that was completely inaccessible. Like the entire playground, there wasn't one thing you could do. In fairness, this is not Blackburn Park's playground, but it might as well. There was not one thing on this entire huge, beautiful playground that you could do without climbing up the stairs. I was like mortified. You know, like I'm trying to lead the way for these kids with disabilities, and I brought Liam to a playground that he couldn't play on. Or so I thought, because by the time I stood up, and I turned back towards Liam trying to like figure out what the heck I'm going to do, because I was like so embarrassed. Liam was out of his wheelchair. He had crawled over to the stairs, climbed up with his arms, climbed all the way up, and by the time I saw him, was sliding down the slide with my kids. Accessibility is a huge issue, and it's something we're definitely lacking. But that day, the only thing that was holding me back was me. And he taught me something that I'll never forget. And through my journey with Chinese superheroes, what I've seen over and over and over again is that like joy and gratitude, these things are things that we can choose. And Liam taught me that day, but I've been learning it for several years. These are my 3 boys. This is exactly what they look like all the time. They are a wonderful mess. And Rory is 10, Milo is 7, and Sheldon just turned 5. So when it was 2012 when I was in Seattle, and Rory was about 1 year old, and I worked at a very cushy tech company where they like gave us massages and food and I was like hooked. You know, I was like reading it every day. And I'll like never forget, I was rocking Rory in the rocking chair and like scrolling on my phone because that's what you're supposed to do, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, like Brenna is a superhero and needs a cape. So I like made Brenna a cape, just like the same ones I was making for nobody. And I sent it to her and I got this photo back and it like changed my life forever, you know? And I think it's important to know that it's usually like something very small, like making a decision in a rocking chair that like changes your life forever. It's not the big decisions that you're making and think this is going to change my life. It's like the ones you don't know are changing your life that actually do. So I started making more cakes. I just kept going on Facebook and finding families who were sharing their kids' stories, and I'd be like, hey, can I send you a cake? Can I send you a cake? And this was my first sewing project, so I was like, I can only sew superhero cakes. But I was like getting used to sewing superhero cakes, and these are some of our very first time superheroes. And I hoped that if I sent a cake and it made the kid happy, like for me that was enough. When I thought of Brenna, I wanted Brenna and her family to know that like I see that you're extraordinary. But like that was kind of enough. But the kids started wearing their capes to the hospital, and they started wearing them to surgery, and they started wearing them to therapy, and they started wearing them to school, and I really had no idea that like something this simple meant so much to them. When you're like starting something, for someone to post a picture on social media, that we hate for that, right? We're like, please post a picture. And like they were posting pictures, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like they really like it. It means something to them. So what happened was that one of the very first cakes I sent went to a boy named Isaac in DC. And then I got an email from somebody who was like, I'm a family friend, and I write for today.com, and I love to do a story. So I had no idea what I'm doing, and I'm definitely still working at a job. And they put an article out on today.com, and I learned very quickly that all that press is just copying their stories. So like instantaneously, it was like everywhere. And I was like, I didn't know what to do, you know? I would never forget the morning we were on the Today Show. They like came out to Seattle. We had 400 orders that morning. And I was like sitting at Panera, it's like my office. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like I'm sewing these in my kitchen, you know? And I had no plan. I had no plan. And then one day I'm at work, so I probably grew this company at work, right? Which is not clear to me. But I'm sitting at work and the phone rings and I answer it, and it's like ABC World News and with Diane Sawyer, and they're like, we don't have a spot. I'm like, I either need to stop sending cakes, like no more cakes ever again, like cut it off, or I need to like go for it. And when you're in the moment of whether you're gonna go for it, you're insane. So like you logically think of things that are not logical at all. And my husband was like, I'm like, I just need 1 year to figure it out. This is 9 years later, we haven't figured it out. But I quit my job and we just like went for it. I was like all in. My mom was a special education teacher my whole life, and I'm sure that's where like the seeds were planted. But I had no idea that like there was this community of families with special needs of every kind, and like they were my people, you know? We are not diagnosis specific, which is one of my favorite parts of Tiny Superheroes. So we have kids who are revealing superpowers through ADHD, anxiety, autism, heart defects, terminal cancer, physical disabilities. Like there's a huge range, and the commonality is that like they're all loving humans, right? Who are supporting one another. It instantly became more than cakes because I get bored easily. So we did a survey and it was like, how many of our families participate in extracurricular activities? And 80% said no. They don't. And I was like, how many of you 80% want to? And 98% were like, yes. 13, I sent Brenda's cake. We've sent over 100,000 cakes. They're all over the world, which is just one of the coolest things about social media is you just have like no limitations and like we do no marketing anywhere other than the United States, but there's tiny superheroes literally everywhere. Thousands of diagnoses. When I started, I think it was like, I'm familiar with Down syndrome, I'm familiar with like these 5 things, but like none of the kids coming in had those 5 things. I was like, I had no idea. I had no idea what people were going through. Our online community is 40,000, essentially 40,000 moms in our Facebook group who just support one another. It's really amazing and organic and beautiful. And last year was super rough, but in 2020 we broke 2 million in revenue, which I just never thought was possible. And most people don't think it's possible for me, So there's a few things that I've learned along the way that I was just going to start your day with 3 of them. So you can do well and do good. Brandon, I think you said like you can do good and do good. I love that. And this is something that took me a long time to process because everybody wants me to be a nonprofit, And nonprofits are great, but there's a difference between someone who wants to like run a business and somebody who wants to run a nonprofit. And I'm someone who wants to run a business. I want to build something that sustains itself, and they don't have to keep calling people for money all the time because it works. So we have a really unique model that it's kind of like our secret, not really, but it's amazing that it works. So every family can nominate their kid for a cake. Every child that's nominated gets a cake. So we give them a little crowdfunding campaign. It kind of looks like a GoFundMe campaign with a $50 goal. And whether the kid raises $0 or $1,000, they get a cake. But every $50 that's raised cumulatively sponsors a cake. And it's really amazing because it gets their whole community involved. And if you've ever been in a situation where you have a family in need around you, you have no idea how to help, Or maybe like the first week, I'm going to bring over lasagna, but after that, I have no idea how to help. And all of these families become very isolated very quickly because in our lack of knowing how to help, we just like avoid them, So Tiny Superheroes is like a way to like bring them into your journey with you. The second thing is that like every single person has a story. I am a big fan of Brene Brown, and she says, so she's going this with her, but she's like, everyone has a story that will bring you to tears. And if you listen carefully enough, everyone has a story that will bring you to your knees. And what I have learned in this process is like I do not know everything at all. I usually don't know how to approach. I'm in awkward situations all the time that I have no idea how to handle. Like you're at the grocery store and your kid is like pointing to somebody who's different. You're like, I have no idea how to handle this situation. But what I've learned is that like if you just embrace every human as a human and you just open yourself to their story, like connecting with them is super easy. This is super Davion. I was mentioning this because we're trying to tell Saturdays. It's very cool. Davion, he came to visit a couple months ago. He's in Kansas City, but he is 8 years old now. When he was 4 months old, he was locked in a fastened up with a candle. And his entire body is completely burned. He is phenomenally courageous. He's been living with his family for a few years, and his adoption was just finalized. If anyone here is familiar with John O'Leary, who's like one of my heroes and lives here, he's amazing. I introduced Davion and John O'Leary. John O'Leary was also burned across over his entire body. And the first time that Davion saw a video of John, he said, his hands are like mine. And it's like this most simple thing that Davion had never seen anyone whose hands look like his, and he did. This is Mario. He's one of my favorite people in the world. He's 22. He lives in LA. He has so many different health issues that are complicated, but I would say the most obvious one is his legs didn't develop when he was growing. So it causes lots of different problems with the whole body. But Mario is amazing, and he looks different, acts different, talks different. He like loves ska music. He's one of like the coolest people I know, and he also can't write his name, And so you can imagine going through school was really hard for Mario. And now at 22, and he's he's probably intellectually still like 10, right? But socially totally adapted. Mario is totally against bullying. Like, all Mario cares about is that no kid ever gets bullied ever again. So he made an organization called Stand With Mario. They raise money for buddy benches, and like, this kid has a mission. And if you just saw him on the street, because I've been with him on the street, people don't know his story, and they don't even want to know his story. But like, once you know their story, you can't go back. I'd say the most significant thing that Tiny Secrets has taught me is that gratitude is a choice. And I learned it with Brenna right away. When I was reading her story, I was like, how are they, like, why are they like grateful? You know, like, they're writing about their daughter may not survive, and they're grateful to the doctors. And I was just not sure that in that scenario would I have the same feelings. But like, I've learned that it's just a choice. And the people that I'm surrounded with make that choice all the time, which is really interesting because other people I'm surrounded with who have nothing to complain about don't make that choice. When we were living in Seattle, I was at the hospital and there's this little girl like running around the fountain, and I just like, now I can no longer resist myself. I used to hold back and now I just can't. And I like, went up to her and I met her name was Brittany. She was 3 years old. They were living in rural Alaska, that's where they lived, like literally like in the woods. And she was sick and they kept going to the doctor and couldn't figure out what's wrong. Finally did an MRI and found 12 tumors in her brain and spine. And she was life flighted to Seattle, like from the appointment to Seattle, where they lived for 9 months for treatment. Remedy had a 26-year-old mom named Heather. There was lots of issues going on with her relationship with Remedy's dad. And this 26-year-old woman was the most courageous person I have ever seen. Like, you could crumble in this situation, you should crumble. And they don't crumble. Like, they celebrated birthdays. Remedy delivered cakes with me. And like 9 months later, with no chance of this, like Remedy was cancer-free. The families that I meet and the things that they go through, I could never imagine. But every time, their choice is to just like face it, be grateful for what they have, and take one day at a time, which is so applicable to every day that we have. They just do it a lot better, you know? And it's been really cool to learn from them, to just be engaged in this community and have them be part of building the business. We do everything one cake at a time. It can be really overwhelming. Last year was terrible for our business. The year before was amazing for our business. I don't even know what's happening this year. It's already March, apparently. Who knows? But it's like, I think what I've learned over time is that, like, this whole thing we have is a journey. You know, I was thinking on the way here, like, some of those, you think of like a very successful person who did everything they're striving to do, and then like ended their life, you know? And so at the end of the day, like, what matters becomes very clear when you surround yourself with people who understand what matters, and usually it's not money, you know? And I'm just very grateful for the journey that I've been on. I'm going to end with one more story. So very early in Tiny Superheroes, when I was still working at a company, I was still sewing in my kitchen, I got an email from a father. You don't hear from a lot of dads, just heads up to dads, like, get involved. It's really fun when you hear from dads. You're like, oh, there's a dad. It's amazing. I got an email from a dad. It was surprising. And I also didn't know that, which was surprising because I was still very new. And he wanted to let me know that his son received his cake. And then his son loved his cake. And then also his son had just passed away, and he loved it so much that he and his wife decided to marry him. Now, there is nothing more devastating probably in the world than losing your child. Like, it shouldn't happen. And in that worst moment of their life, this family chose gratitude and hope and courage and joy. And I'll never forget it, because if that man could choose it in that moment, then I can choose it too. Thank you so much for having me. Feel free to reach out if you ever want to talk. If you know somebody who needs a cake, let's give them a cake. And I hope you have a wonderful day here. wish, I just like had a cake and I was like, can you make these? And they're like, no. And then they like point me to a map or somewhere else for me to go, like literally like point to a map. And I go there and there's like, it's like a abandoned building, you know, and I'm like walking around and this like person was like, hey, I was like, is there somewhere here with like a lot of sewing machines? He's like, they're in there. And I met Tom, who was a Cambodian woman, and they sewed the next several thousand capes for me. And we now have a manufacturer overseas. Thank you.